Nation of Fit in 10, it is day 59. Is it day 59? Yeah, it's day 59. 11 days to go. I should know the days, but I'm surprised it's day 59 already. 11 days to go. We are almost there, but not quite. Still 11 days to go. And I will be putting up the Calendly link soon so you can book your scans. I know there's a couple people that book their scans early because they're going away, so that doesn't obviously help those people too much. But the rest of you, you've got a couple extra days because I'm not going to run the scans until at least the day after, and for a couple days thereafter, 71, 72, 73, those days. So, all right. So I have no more questions to answer. So I'm going to go back on some old questions, not from this group, but from other groups. And I think there's a really great, or the questions that I'm about to read are really great questions. So here we go. Exercise order. Does it matter? It doesn't really matter. Like, does it matter? Like, let's say I work like an isolated movement. Like, let's say I work my triceps. And then I go into bench press. Does that matter? Like, would that make a difference? Or what if I work, say, my biceps, and then I go and do some pull downs, say like on a lat pull down, or I do some assisted pull-ups, same thing. Is that going to matter? Okay, exercise order does matter. So typically when I program or when I get people to do movements, I always get them to do some sort of general warm-up for the areas that are going to be targeted, especially sensitive areas. So for example, if it's upper body, do a lot of warm-up for the shoulder girdle. If it's lower body, do a lot of warm-ups for the hip, definitely the hips, and sometimes the knees as well. But that's not to say that elbows and ankles and stuff like that aren't important either. But coming back to exercise order here, really what we want to do ideally, and again, it can depend on what you're trying to achieve. Generally speaking, we will always do the compound movements first, the multi-muscle, the multi-jointed movements first, and then we go to our isolated. That's a general rule of thumb. So you'll always see that we'll do our rows and presses, or we'll do our squats or lunges before we're going to do something like a bicep curl or a tricep curl in the upper body, or tricep press down or something like that, some sort of tricep or elbow extension, some movement with elbow extension. Lower body, same thing. We wouldn't, typically we wouldn't do like an isolated movement like a hamstring curl or something before we do our squats or something. But not always the case. Sometimes we do this if we really want to. Let me actually go there in a second. So why is this? So if we want to maximize our strength on our bench press and our compound movements, if we want to get the most out of our chest, let's say we're doing a bench press, if we fatigue our triceps beforehand, because our triceps are essentially assistance muscles on these, we are going to lessen the load and lessen the amount of intensity that we can put into our chest. Likewise, if we're doing a row, or if we do a biceps, if we train our biceps first and then we do rows, we are not going to be able to row the same amount of weight. We're not going to be able to tax our back as much as possible. Now, you might do something like this. You might do a fly. This is just an example. This is not something we would typically do in class, but let's just say you want to really exhaust the chest. So you might do an isolated movement like a fly for the chest. So we exhaust the chest. And then we go to a press. So we go from an isolated movement to a compound, and our triceps are still fresh, but we can really, really work on, further exhausting the chest without exhausting the triceps, because we pre-exhausted, what we call pre-exhaust, the chest, right? So generally speaking, we'll always do a compound movement, these multi-jointed, or otherwise known as multi-muscled movements first. Again, this is generally speaking. Then we go to these isolated movements, these one-jointed movements, right? Like a bicep curl or an overhead tricep extension, or a chest fly, or a hamstring curl, that type of thing, okay? All right, let's see, what else can I talk about here with all these great questions? Okay, let me see. All right, this person asks, can you talk about grip width when doing a lat pull down using a cable machine? Narrow or wide, does it make a difference? Okay, generally speaking, when you go narrow, you're going to involve more of your arms. You're going to involve more biceps. Biceps are going to be involved regardless, and so are your forearms when you're doing any kind of pulling movement. But when you go wider, you're going to involve less, right? If I do a wide pull up and I'm doing this, you can see there's not as much flexion at my elbow as if I go narrow. Now I do a lot of flexion at the elbow, okay? Or if I do reverse, right? There's a lot of flexion happening at the elbow. In order for that flexion to happen, the bicep has to work. Okay, so if we go wider, we are going to use less bicep and essentially more of your back. In theory, really, okay? I say this all in theory. Really, we have to, I suppose, test this with electrodes or whatever, however we would do this. We want to see how much the muscle is stimulating, so we need to measure that. But for sure, if I'm only bending this much, I'm not going to be using the biceps as much if I'm going from here to here as if I'm going from here all the way to here against tension, right? For sure. So, yes, but in terms of its effectiveness on the lats, yeah, I mean, if you go narrower, you are going to get more of a stretch than if you're out here. You're going to get more of a stretch. So effectively, if I'm doing, let's say, a pull down like this, I'm actually getting more range through the lat muscle, but I'm also getting more bicep working. If I go out here, I'm getting less range, but less bicep as well. Okay, so they each have their pros and cons. Okay, so that was a very specific question about pull downs. All right, let's get the message of the day. Okay, where am I here? Where's my message of the day on this day 59? Well, yeah, I don't know if I want to read this one or not. I feel like there's a better one here. You know what? I want to read you something that I thought was interesting. I'm going to read you something that I thought was interesting because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I just thought this guy was very, very interesting. And I've kind of touched upon this before, but it was just like the way this guy said it. So he was just, it was all basically about mindset. And basically learning to let go when we encounter some sort of tragic event. Now maybe it's not that tragic, or maybe it is super tragic. And so I'm actually going to read exactly what he said because I wrote it down. I just thought it was interesting. So this guy went on to say, I'll find his name if you're interested. He said, so I'm just reading exactly like he said it. I'm not saying that I condone the behavior of whoever did what. I'm not saying it was easy to experience. But when you really understand the manifest world, and I'm speaking from the unmanifest world, which is boundless, then it's just stuff that is happening. It's just stuff that is happening. It doesn't mean it's ideal. It doesn't mean it is comfortable. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's objectively something you want. But it's still what happened. The degree to which you are not okay with that is the degree to which you will suffer. And that is just so interesting, right? I mean, we've talked about this, perfect example is, I've said it to you guys like many times in different situations, like trying to accept something or not accept something essentially, right? And the degree to which you don't accept it is the degree that you're going to suffer. And it's just so true. It's just like you just have to, and I realize it's easier said than done. And believe me, I know that. But it is so true, right? It's really this last little paragraph here, or this last statement, this last quote, the degree to which you are not okay with that is the degree to which you will suffer. It's just very interesting, right? Anyways, I thought it was cool. I wrote it all down, and I wrote it down. I thought about sharing it with you guys. So there you go. All right. Take it for what it's worth to you. Okay. All right. That's it. Positive energy, positive vibes. Believe in yourself. For the love of God, give some gratitude, and I'll talk to you all very soon. See you guys.